Yeah.
Drums! Yeah, that's what we're here for. We're here to play the drums. And you got to start somewhere, so you may as well start here. The rock beat, that I call the straight eighth beat. To call it rock beat is kind of too simple of a term because it's used in every genre of music. You'll find it in rock, funk, R&B, country, reggae. It's everywhere. It's even sort of the root groove, which is going to allow you to learn a lot of world rhythms. The only time I really ever refer to it as a rock beat is if I'm on stage with someone and someone turns around and says, "Hey Josh, do you know da-da-da?" And I'm like, "I don't know da-da-da." I'll say, "Is it a rock beat?" Because sometimes if I say, "Is it straight eighth rhythm?" it can be kind of confusing. So if I say, "Is it a rock beat?" and they're like, "Yeah, it's rock," I know I'm going to go da-da-da-da-da-da-da. At least gives me a starting point on my own after that, but at least I have a place to start. Other than that, I like to think of it as a straight eighth beat because it's just so universal. So let's get into it, get you going, and you'll be on your way. If you've ever just sat down and tried to play a beat and found it challenging, you're not alone. None of this came easy for me. The technical aspect of drumming was very challenging, still is actually. So you're trying to get all the limbs going at the same time, and you're thinking, thank you for playing. Not happening.
Oh no!
I use something called the breakdown method in order to learn and work on grooves. I still use it today. And so instead of having all the limbs go at one time, what I do are two limb combinations, hi-hat and snare, hi-hat bass drum, and snare drum. That allows you to see where your weaknesses are and then also see where your strengths are. You can practice the things that are challenging, you put it all back together, boom. It's kind of like magic. You're going to be able to do this thing. I've never had anyone not be able to play these grooves if you use this breakdown method. Notation. Sounds very serious. But if you're looking at this thing at the bottom of the screen here, that's notation, it's drum music. And the drum music is written different than other things in the sense that we don't have C or B flat or F or whatever, but each place is assigning an instrument on the drum set. So if you look just above the staff there's a bunch of X's. That's referring to playing on the hi-hat. The middle space is referring to playing on the snare drum, where the dot is there, and the dot in the bottom space is referring to playing on the bass drum. So basically, for this groove, you have hi-hat, snare drum, bass drum. And for now, that's really all you need to know about the notation. The last thing we need to cover just briefly has to do with counting. So if you'll notice on here, it says 4/4 time, and all that's meaning is that in each bar, which is what you're looking at, one bar of time, there's going to be the equivalent of 4 quarter notes. On the top line, you'll see 2 note groupings together. Those are actually eighth notes. The first half of that gets the number. The second half, we have to call that something else. So we're calling that the and. So if you're counting along there, just in those eighth notes across the top, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And that makes 8 eighth notes in a measure of 4/4 time, and that's how you get that. They're just quarter notes in the bottom part. The bass drum on 1, snare drum on 2, bass drum on 3, snare drum on 4. So those are just quarter notes, and then you'll notice that the hi-hat is playing all those notes all the way through. If you want to, just practice hi-hat counting eighth notes with me real quick, just so you can get an idea for it, and then we'll go on from there. Hi-hats, 1 and 2, tap the hi-hat, count out loud. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. I recommend that you count out loud because you can. If you play the saxophone, you can't really 1 or 2. You can't really do that all at the same time. On the drums, you actually can. And I think that what it does is it assures you that things are going well. And if you're counting and playing or something are off, then it lets you know in a deeper way that something's off, and then you can make the adjustment for it. So count out loud whenever you can. You don't have to do that at your gig. 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. But when you're practicing, if you can do that, it's certainly helpful. Okay, all that done. Let's do some breakdowns. We're going to play the hi-hat and the snare drum. The hi-hat is going to play eighth notes all the way across. The snare drum is going to play on beats 2 and 4. So we're going to count one measure of just the hi-hat and then bring the snare drum in on 2 and 4. They're going to play together. 1 and 2 and hi-hat, eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 Remember, as you're playing along, the hi-hat and the snare drum hit together on 2 and 4. Don't have the hi-hat come off. Charlie Watts does that, and he's cool, but he's Charlie Watts. For now, let's just keep them playing together. Okay, let's do the hi-hat and the bass drum now. Before we do, just play these two together a couple times just to get the feel and the timing of it. One thing I'll say about the bass drum is don't feel like you need to lift your whole leg or do something like this, you know. Also, try to keep your foot in contact with the footboard or the pedal so you don't slap your foot and then into the pedal and kind of make a flam. You want to just push the pedal down and put the beater into the drum head. You can play from your ankle or you can lift your whole leg. If I need more volume, I use more of the leg. If I need more control and speed, sometimes I'm more heel down. But either way, keep your foot in contact with the pedal. Don't overthink it, but just notice if that's happening, if your whole leg is coming up or something crazy is happening. All right, so let's put them together. One measure of the hi-hat, then we're going to play the bass drum on beats 1 and 3, counting out loud, because it's not that weird, even if you're by yourself. Here we go. Hi-hat, 1 and 2, and hi-hat. Ready, begin. 1 and 2 and 3, and here comes the bass. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1. Now we're going to leave the hi-hat out and we're just going to play the bass drum and the snare drum. They're really just playing quarter notes, bass drum, snare drum, back and forth. So try to keep the count of the eighth notes going so the spacing is correct between these two. Here we go, starting with the bass drum. 1 and 2 and ready, here we go. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. You have done all the work. We can put all this together into a beat. We're going to do a 1-bar run up on the hi-hat, and then we're going to start with the bass drum. I believe in you. You can do this. Here we go. Tapping the hi-hat. Ready? Begin. 1 and 2 and bass drum starts. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. There's a lot of action there that's happening. So what I want you to do is focus on the hi-hat and make that the time and make all the other stuff play to the hi-hat for right now. This is the time. It never stops. It's going. Everything's playing to the hi-hat. So let's try that again, focusing on the hi-hat. 1 and 2 and 3 and here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And the last thing I'll say is sometimes it's good to say bass and snare and bass and snare. It seems a little bit like child storybook or whatever, but I promise you that if you're saying the instrument that you're supposed to be playing, it's very helpful. If I go snare and I'm playing the bass drum, it feels a little bit weird. But if I'm saying bass and bass and snare, quite helpful. One more time doing the bass and snare trick. Here we go. Hi-hat. Ready? Begin. 1 and 2 and here we go. A bass and snare and 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 bass. If you're playing this groove now, awesome, fantastic. If you're not yet, no worries. I got you. I promise you, you go through that breakdown method a few more times and put that stuff back together, you're going to be able to get it. Count. Focus on the hi-hat, say bass and snare if you have to. I guarantee you, you'll get it. Sometimes people get it right away. Sometimes it takes people a day, a week, a month. There's no time on this. We're just doing the work and trying to get this thing figured out. I know you can do it. Have fun, and we'll see you next time.